Alright, so we'll say good morning. Let's begin. Today's daf is Lamed Beis 32. We are picking up at 31. Lamed Aleph Amud Beis, and we are picking up Nafak of the Avad Uvda, which is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So just to reorient ourselves a little bit, we were dealing with a riveting case that we brought down on Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph. And that case was dealing with the following situation. Reuven and Shimon. Reuven comes over to Shimon. I should say, actually, they're right. Reuven comes over to Shimon. Shimon, what are you doing on my land? So Shimon says, this land belonged to my father. Reuven says, this land belonged to my father. Reuven brings witnesses that indeed the land belonged to his father. Shimon brought witnesses. Reuven brought witnesses that the land belonged to his father, and he lived there for the last 3 years. Shimon brought witnesses that he lived there for the last 3 years, but did not bring anything to do with his father. So remember again, we have Machlokes, Rav Nachman and Rava as to what exactly we do. According to Rav Nachman, ultimately again, the two testimonies about Chazaka cancel each other out, and all you have is the first Eidos relating to Reuven's father. Therefore, we give the land to Reuven. Rava said, no, it's Eidos Muchashas. The Eidos goes ahead and cancels each other out, and there's nothing to talk about over here. So we'll say, so this then went into a discussion about Chayshin. So we'll say, So then one more piece happened. Then what ended up occurring? So then Shimon brought another set of witnesses, and that other set of witnesses. So according to Rav Nachman, According to Rav Nachman, they awarded the land to Reuven, because Reuven at the end of the day had the testimony supporting the fact that it belonged to his father. Subsequently, Shimon went ahead and brought witnesses that said the land belonged to his father. So now again, Shimon also has that testimony. So what happened? Rav Nachman originally wanted to go ahead and take that land away from Reuven, and once again kind of put it up for play. They said to Rav Nachman, you can't do that, because if you do that, there's zilusa de Beis Din. You're degrading the honor of Beis Din by constantly going back and forth and reversing previous judgments. Then we got into a discussion about whether or not chashinon lezilusa de beidina. Do we care about the degradation of Beis Din or not? Meaning, do we sometimes refrain from reversing judgments in order to maintain the integrity of Beis Din or not? So says the Gemara. So we'll say it seemed to be the conclusion where we left off yesterday is that yes, chashinon lezilusa de Beis Din, we are careful, right? We are careful to maintain the integrity of Beis Din, and therefore we do not go ahead and reverse previous decisions. So says the Gemara, Nafak Avad Uvda. So what happens? It turns out that after this whole discussion, Rav Nachman went back and reversed the previous decision, and he went ahead and he put the land back up for play. When I say back up for play, I mean that now both Reuven and Shimon both have edus that the land belonged to their father, and they both had years of chazakah. In which case, Rav Nachman extracted it from Reuven, and again kind of put it into the arena of let's see who's going to get it. Says the Gemara, so man dechaza savar ta'usahu biyadei. So we'll say, so the one who saw him do this figured that, you know what, he was just correcting a previous mistaken ruling. Below he, but that was not true. Elam mishum detalyu ba'ashli ravave. We'll say ashli ravave means great strong ropes. Rav Nachman felt that we'll say he had whom to rely on in terms of the fact that lo chashin lezelusa de beidina. He felt that he had strong shoulders to stand on to support him, that in general we will reverse a previous ruling of Beis Din, and we are not choshesh, we are not worried about eroding the integrity of Beis Din. We'll say, now where did Rav Nachman get this from? Tisnan, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, we'll say it's a very interesting halacha. Ein malin l'kunal pi eidechad. Rabbi Yehuda says that you cannot establish the yichos of a Kohen through the testimony of one witness. In other words, a guy says, I'm a Kohen, and he goes ahead and he brings one witness. That one witness is not enough to establish him as a Kohen. I will say, now understand over here, when we speak about establishing someone as a Kohen, we are talking about for Truma purposes. Meaning, remember, someone comes into shul, we ask him, Kohen, Levi, Yisrael. He says Kohen. So we don't say, no, you have eidos, you approve it. I say, because the truth is, again, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So if he's not a Kohen and he got the first aliyah, it really doesn't matter. When it matters, ultimately, again, is for truma. So we're talking about now over here about a Kohen who's going to consume truma. So how do we establish Kohanic credentials for tshuva? For truma, not for tshuva, for truma. So Rabbi Yehuda says, we do not establish a person as a Kohen on the basis of an eid echad, of one witness. You need real testimony. Amar Rabbi Elazar said, a masai, when is that true? B'makom sheish orin. Rabbi said, that's only when there are people who are objecting to his Kohanic status. Ava b'makom she'in orin ma'alin l'kuna al pi eid echad. But if there's no one objecting, if there's no one objecting to his Kohanic status, then we can establish someone as a Kohen through the testimony of an Eid Echad. Reb Shimon Gamliel Omer, Mishram B'Shimon ben Askan, Ma'alin l'kuhuna pei Eid Echad. And Reb Shimon Gamliel says in Reb Shimon Askan that you can establish someone's Kohanic credentials on the basis of an Eid Echad. Says the Gemara, Reb Shimon Gamliel and Reb Elazar. So Reb Shimon Gamliel and Reb Elazar seem to be saying the same thing, that you could go ahead and establish someone as a Kohen on the basis of an Eid Echad. Maybe what we're arguing about is the following. Maybe what we're arguing about is what happens if, let's say, then another solitary witness, a single witness, comes along and objects to his Kohanic status. So does a single witness have the ability to take away that Kohanic status? Rabbi Elazar Savar Ir Urchad. So Rabbi Elazar holds that even one witness could go ahead and take away his status. Look at the Rashbam, last Rashbam on the page. Rabbi Elazar Savar Ir Urchad, Havi Irur, Ve'ein Eid Echad Ne'aman Alav La'achshiro. That they will say, ultimately, again, if another witness comes along and says, you're not a Kohen, right, then ultimately, again, another Eid Echad who says you are, does not have the ability to bolster his Kohanic credentials. Top of Lamed days. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Savar Ir or Trey. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, no. The only way will say that the testimony of the Eid Echad who says that he is a Kohen can go ahead and be taken away is if you have two witnesses who go ahead and object to the testimony of the Eid Echad. Two witnesses come along and say, we know this guy is not a Kohen, whatever their testimony is, then that takes away the testimony of the Eid Echad. But if it's only Eid Echad, one Eid Echad against Eid Echad, we believe the first Eid Echad who established him as a Kohen. I, B'hamar Rabbi Yochanan, Divri Akol in Irur Pachos Mishnayim. Rabbi say we already said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that in general, that Irur, Rabbi say the ability to undermine an already established Chazaka only takes place with two witnesses. V'hachamayaskinon us. Rabbi say what's the case? Now this, I know I say a lot of stuff is riveting. This is riveting. Watch this. V'hachamayaskinon. Rabbi say 3 lines down. Lamed Beis Mod Aleph. Kevan demechaskina le'ba'avua. Excuse me. Kegon demechaskina le'ba'avua. The high Kohen. Supposed to say, watch this. We'll call him Ruvain. Ruvain has a father, Yaakov. Right? Ruvain has a father, Yaakov. What happens? So we know, Kegon demechaskina le'ba'avua, the high Kohen. So we know that Yaakov is a Kohen. Right? Or I should say, we know, when I say we know, the Chazak, because we've known Yaakov to be a Kohen for a long time. So the good news is, if Yaakov is a Kohen, then what's Ruvain's status? Baruch Hashem, he's a Kohen as well. So what happened? V'nafak alei kala de ben grusha ben chalutzahu. Oh, now what happens? A rumor starts that Yaakov married illegally, and therefore again he married a grusha, he married a divorcee, which Kohen is not permitted to do, and as a result, his son is a ben grusha ben chalutza, which means his son is a chalal. Son is disqualified from the kuna. So now, remember, I want to be clear. This is nafak alei kal. This is a rumor. This is a rumor now that's circulating. Now what happens? If you look at the Rashbam, it says v'nafak alei kala kol ba'alma v'lo edus. There's no testimony about this. There's just simply what? There's just rumors. So what do we do in a rumor case? V'anchesei. V'achsine. Achsine means we remove him from the kahuna. Now what that means is, what we do is we go into a holding pattern. It doesn't literally mean we remove him from the kahuna. What we ask him is, allow us to be mevara this, allow us to straighten out what this call is, but while the investigation is ongoing, we are asking that you not practice. Right? We're asking that you not conduct yourself as a kohen. So again, I want to be clear. It's not that we're accepting the call. We're not accepting the rumors. What we're saying is we have to investigate the rumors, and we're asking again, please do not practice as a kohen during the course of the investigation. Watch this, okay? So get ready. Here's where it gets very exciting. Va'asa eid echad va'amr, the kohen who, so in the midst of the investigation, who shows up in Beis Din, and the eid echad. So eid echad, one witness shows up and says, I know his mother, she's not the grusha, she's not the chalutza, it was a legal marriage, and therefore again, Ruvain is in fact a kohen. Beautiful. Va'askine means what Rabbi say, we lift him back up to his status. Why? Because remember again, the only thing that we had, so to speak, removing him from his status was a call, was a rumor. Eid echad is enough to go ahead and reverse the rumor. Now, by the way, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking to yourself, how can you penalize the guy because of a rumor? I saw it. I saw the facial expressions, right? But again, I could read the crowd. But again, they have to understand something. Consumption of truma by a non-Kohen is a transgression punishable by kares. So what there is no choice here but to err on the side of caution. Halacha cannot allow someone about whom there is a question to go ahead and consume. It's a public safety matter. So matters of public safety, so halacha feels to have to err on the side of caution. Even though you're right, it's totally unfair. It's just a rumor, and rumors could go ahead and circulate in all kinds of ways. Because you must remember, when we speak about removing him from his kohanic status, again, we're not talking about getting rishon. Well, all right, it's duchening also. That's not what's at play over here. What's at play over here is money, is truma. So at the end of the day, we have to err on the side of caution. Fine, say Echad shows up. Rumor is not true. Wonderful. We suspend his. We take him out of the holding cell, so to speak, and we restore his state to being a kohen. Watch this. Wow. So Hazra was saying. Now 2 more witnesses show up afterwards. Right? By the way, this is not necessarily happening in rapid succession, as you understand. A day later, however much later, 2 witnesses show up and say his mother was a grusha. We were at the chasana. The smorgasbord wasn't so good, and she's a grusha, right? So we know that we'll say this is testimony over here. These are 2 Eidim showing up now and saying that she was a grusha. What happens? Va'achsine. So they remove him from the kuna, because we'll say now you have bona fide edus that this guy he's a cholol, right? You have 2 witnesses now. Okay, va'aseh eid echad like Chagaja, and then what happens? Now another eid echad comes along and says the kohenu. Now both say, now look what we've got over here. So just let's follow the timeline. So right, Monday everything is fine, wonderful. He's eating truma to his heart's content. Kol, right, rumor surfaces. We go into holding pattern. Suspend his kahuna. What happens? Eid echad comes along and says he's a kohen, right, and his mother's not a grusha. Restore his kahuna. 2 witnesses come along and say he's not a kohen. He's grusha, ben grusha. We now will say, now remember, after that testimony, we don't suspend his kahuna. We tell him, you're a chalal. You are a chalal. Then what happens? Another Eid Echad comes, another solitary witness comes, and says that he is a Kohen. So both sides. So what in essence I have over the continuum of this case is, I have 2 witnesses saying that he's not a Kohen, and I have 2 witnesses saying that he is a Kohen. Now, the interesting part, of course, over here is what? The 2 witnesses who say he is a Kohen are not coming together. So the Gemara says, watch this. Udikuli Alma, Mitztarfin Eidos. Now, both say the Gemara makes a statement over here that we're going to challenge in just a moment, but the Gemara suggests, and everyone agrees that we could combine witnesses into a testimonial unit. Now we'll say what that would mean is the first Eid Echad who said he's a Kohen and the second Eid Echad who said he's a Kohen, because they are testifying about the same matter, they could be forged into a testimonial unit of 2 witnesses, and as such, again, they form a unit of Eidos. So we'll say, in essence, then what you have is what? You have 2 versus 2. So watch this. So we'll say, now normally, if you have 2 versus 2, so what happens? If you have 2 versus 2, normally they cancel each other out, in which case you would be pretty much back to the kol. So the Gemara says, Vahacha, so what's the case over here? Vahacha, b'meichosh lezelusa de beidina kamiflagi. And I will say, what are they arguing about over here? What they're arguing about over here is, do we constantly reverse and reinstate the psak din of a beis din? Because remember, what's happening over here? There's a kol, we suspend his kahuna. There's an eid echad, we reinstate his kahuna. There's shtei eidim, we suspend his kahuna. There's an eid echad, we reinstate his kahuna. So at some point in time, does beis din say all rulings are final, case is closed? Or do we constantly go ahead and go back for that? I will say, I just want to point out, David mentioned this at the end of the shir yesterday. This discussion, by the way, is only in terms of financial cases. It is clear that in the realm of capital cases, we look for anything we can, especially if someone is found guilty, to overturn that sentence. So in capital cases, we absolutely will accept all kinds of testimony until the last minute in order to reverse a ruling of a death penalty. But again, we're not talking about that over here. So what happens? Says the Gemara. So we'll say, take a look at the Rashba for just a moment. Actually, I'm sorry. No, not yet. Rabbi Elazar Savar, Kevan da'achsine lo maskinale. So Rabbi Elazar says, once we go ahead and we remove the Kohen from his position, we do not reinstate him. Now, this is not a reference ultimately to the Kol. This is a reference. Good morning, Mr. Schoenfeld. This is a reference. You almost got by me today. Right? So this is a reference. This is a reference ultimately again to after the two witnesses show up. Right? After the two witnesses show up, and we go ahead and we accept that edus and we remove him from his kahuna, we're done. The case is closed. We can't go ahead and open up the case every single time new information comes to light. Why? Because we'll say if the rulings of Beis Din are not final at some point in time, so you erode the integrity of Beis Din. So remember again, so I'm not going to close the case after an Eid Echad because that's not a full testimonial unit. But once two witnesses come on the scene, we're done. We're done. At that point in time, case closed, let's move on. On the other hand, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Savar, Anan Achsine va'anan Maskinole. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, you know what? No, we are the ones who removed him, and we are the ones who will reinstate him. In other words, v'lo chayshinan, v'zilusa de beidina lo chayshinan. And you know what? We are not going to worry about the integrity of the Beis Din. In other words, we'll say, now I want to explain something. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel is also concerned with the integrity of the Beis Din. But he holds that the integrity of the Beis Din is best served how? Is best served ultimately by getting to the truth. And even if that truth requires a bit of flip-flopping, and even if that truth requires a lot of back and forth, that is the integrity of the Beis Din. So we'll say, so really in essence, everyone is concerned with the integrity of the Beis Din. The question is how best to go ahead and safeguard that. Rabbi Elazar says you have to close the case at some point in time. You can't have a constant flip-flop, and therefore again in the Kohen's case, after you go ahead, after you accept the testimony of the two witnesses that say that he's not a Kohen, done. We're not accepting any more testimony. At least we're not accepting any more testimony. Well, we'll see. We'll define it. Rav Shimon Gamliel says no. We accept, and even if we have to flip flop, it's okay. Maskef Rav Ashi says, well, if that's the case, ihachi ma'ir yachad afilu b'treinami. So we'll say, remember how the case is set up. The case is set up is there's a kol, he's not a Kohen. Eid echad, he is a Kohen, reinstate. Two Eidin, he's not a Kohen, take him down. Eid echad, he is a Kohen. So if the Gemara says, so Rav Ashi says the following. Rabbi Elazar, if you're going to tell me that at the end of the day, Chashin Lezilus de Beidina, and after those two witnesses who say that he's not a Kohen come along, the case is closed. If that's the case, then why do you set up that the last witness who comes is an Eid Echad? Even if the last witness who comes is not one witness but two witnesses, why don't you still say the case is closed? Because Chashin Lezilus de Beidina. At some point in time, we have to close out the case because we are concerned about the integrity for Beis Din. Rav Ashi, watch this. Rav Ashi says, the truth is, says Rav Ashi something amazing. In general, no one is worried about the integrity erosion of the Beis Din. In other words, the job of the Beis Din, Rav Osai, is to find the truth. And if it turns out that the Beis Din looks a little bit silly in their pursuit of truth because they're constantly flip-flopping, because there's constantly new information coming on the scene, no. You know, that's the price of doing business. That's what happens in a Beis Din. We're not going to close out the case, bless you, because we're worried about eroding the integrity of Beis Din. We have to keep this going until we get to the truth. So what is the machlokes over here? V'hacha belitzaref eidus kamiflagi. Both say the real machlokes over here is about something much more profound, which is that when two witnesses testify about same information, but come independently, do you have the ability to combine them into a testimonial unit? That is the real machlokes that is unfolding here. Both say, now you understand the power of this, because what's happening in this case? Kol, two witnesses, you're not a Kohen. One witness, you are a Kohen. I'm sorry, wrong. Kol, you're not a Kohen. One witness, you are a Kohen. Two witnesses, you're not a Kohen. One witness, you are a Kohen. I will say the fundamental machlokes is those two who both testify to the fact that Reuven is a Kohen, can they combine to form a testimonial unit attesting to his Kohen status, and now you could say that he has eidos, real eidos, two witnesses eidos that he's a Kohen, to which the Gemara says, and this machlokes is really an early machlokes tanan. How so? The Sanya, because we learned, li'olam ein edusam nitztarafes at sheyiru shneim ke'achad. Well, the Brisa says, according to the Rabbanon, that the testimony of witnesses does not combine until they both witness the same event at the same time. If you look at Rashi for just a moment, Rashbam, Ach Yirushtem Keachad, Es Sa'idos, Lafuki echad omer b'fanei hilva v'echad omer b'fanei hodala. Both say, so they have to witness the same event. They have to witness the same event. Tivka Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha Omer, afilu b'zeh achar zeh, ein edusan miskayemes bebezdin, ad sheya'idu shnehem ke'echad. And Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha says, even b'zeh achar zeh, what does this mean? Look at Rashi. Rashbam. Afilu b'zeh achar zeh, echador b'yom rishon l'zeh, lava ploni mi ploni, mana. So we'll say, let's say this outside. This is an interesting case actually. Let's say one of the witnesses says, I saw Reuven borrow $1,000 from Shimon. And another witness says, I saw Reuven borrow $1,000 from Shimon, but it wasn't Sunday, it was Monday. So we'll say, so there's an opinion that says that they could combine to form a testimonial unit. Why? Because they're probably just mixed up about the days. They witnessed the same event, they're just mixed up about the days. So the Gemara says, but however, again, Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha says, no, afilu b'zeh achar zeh, in order for two witnesses to form one testimonial unit, they have to have witnessed the same event together, and they have to have their information corroborated with one another. Rabbi Nassan says, "Shomin dvarav shal zeh hayom u'lechishyavo chaver lamachar shomin dvarav." Rabbi Nassan, on the other hand, says that what Rabbi say, then no, even if two witnesses go ahead and come one after the other, one comes on Sunday, one comes on Monday to Beis Din, and they're saying the same thing, you could combine their individual testimonies into a testimonial unit. So we'll say, the Gemara suggests that at the end of the day, the machlokes over here by the Kohen is actually not a machlokes about zelusa de beidina. It's not about integrity erosion of the Beis Din, but rather, again, what it's actually about is the ability to combine individually tendered testimonies into one testimonial unit. When you have an Eid Echad coming at the beginning of this process, an Eid Echad coming at the end of the process, both saying the same thing, namely that's what? That Reuven is a Kohen. Can you combine them into one testimonial unit or not? That's the machlokes. Now, I know you want to know what happens in the Kohen case. Right? And he said, what, I know it's not a sugya, we're learning cheskas avatim, but what does happen in this, I'll tell you, I feel this case of the yichus is found in Even HaEzer, in Hilchos Peri Verivia. I have a particular affinity towards this chelik in Shulchan Aruch and Even HaEzer, because one year I learned that we did Even HaEzer and Kol. It was whatever reason, it was one of my best years in learning. So for whatever reason, I feel whenever I get an opportunity to learn something at Even HaEzer, it's always special. So this is in Hilchos Peri Verivia, Siman Gimel, Sif Zayin. Listen to this case. Get ready. This is really riveting. Misha Huchsak Aviv Kohen, V'yatzalav Kolshu Ben Grusha and Chalutza. So again, this is our case. Yaakov, I know I don't have time for this, but I'll do it quickly. Yaakov went ahead. Yaakov is a Kohen. He has a chazaka that he's a Kohen. And what happens? There's a call that goes out that his son Reuven is a Ben Grusha and Chalutza. In other words, rumor goes around that Yaakov was married to, was in a legal marriage, to a divorcee. And therefore his son Reuven is not a Kohen. Choshishin umoritano. So first thing the Shulchan Aruch says, we paskin this idea that we have to go into a holding pattern, meaning we have to investigate this, and you Reuven, son, cannot operate as a Kohen during this time. But Eid Echad achakach ve'et shukash, as well as this is exactly our case. And Eid Echad comes along afterwards and says that Reuven's a Kohen. We accept that doesn't have the Eid Echad. Bo be'ezid machach ve'idu shu chalal, moridin osa bekuna. Bo Eid Echad ve'et shu kasher, malin osa lekuna, shezeh ha'acharon mitztarif le'eid harishon. So we'll say, watch this. So this is exactly our case. Kol, Eid Echad that says you're a Kohen, shtei eidim that say you're not a Kohen, Eid Echad that says you're a Kohen. The Shulchan Aruch paskins, we allowed the two Eid Echads to be mitztarif, to combine with one another and become a testimonial unit. We accept their testimony. B'harei shnayim b'idim shu kasher, u'shnayim b'idim shu pasol, yitchu elu ve'elu v'yitchu akol. So we'll say, watch this. So now that you have 2 against 2, once I have testimonial unit that says that he is a Kohen, even though I have testimonial unit on the other hand, so the eidos cancel each other out, and they also cancel out the kol. They cancel out the rumor. Shashnayim kimeya v'yishar kohen v'cheskas aviv. So we'll say again, here's what's interesting. Once I have bona fide testimony that says he is a Kohen, even though technically speaking that bona fide eidos is cancelled by opposing eidos, but the existence of that eidos is enough to what? Is enough to cancel out the kol. So we'll say, so halacha l'maisa in our case, it's a good Shabbos table discussion. In our case, ultimately, again, the 2 witnesses combine into a testimonial unit. And we'll say, now whether or not that applies in all areas of halacha is a discussion, but at least it applies over here. They become a testimonial unit, they cancel each other out, they cancel the kol out, and ultimately again, Reuven is restored to his previous chazaka. Good. So, Hahu Damle V'Chavre. So we'll say we're back to Cheskes Habatim. Again, I told you. Amazing. Hahu Damle V'Chavre. Ma Bo'is B'Hai Ara. So we'll say, so what happens? So a man says to his friend, a man says to his friend, my boss Bahayara, what are you doing on this land? What are you doing on this land? Amarle, Minoch Zabinta V'Hashtara. So we'll say, so what happens? So Reuven goes over to Shimon. Shimon, what are you doing on this land? I mean, what is he saying? What are you doing on my land? To which Shimon responds, what are you talking about? I bought it from you. Right? Shimon says, I bought it from you. And by the way, here's the shtar. Here's the document that supports Shabbos. So this seems to be like an open and shut case. Here's my shtar. So I'll say, so what happens? I'm a base. Get ready for this. Amarle, shtara zayfahu. So Reuven says to Shimon, okay, shtar, that's a forged document. That's not real. You know that's not real. So I'll say, get ready for this. This is why you can't make this stuff up. So what happens? Gachin lachish le Rabba. So we'll say this case comes before Rabbah. Shimon, the supposed purchaser, right? Shimon is one who's living on the land now with the shtar, bends down to Rabbah and he says, you know what, Rabbah, you're right. In shtar zayfu, he's right. This is a forged shtar. He's witnessing, he is whispering this into the ear of Rabbah, right? Meaning, Reuven doesn't hear this. So Shimon says, yes, the shtar is forged. Miu shtar ma'al yahavali. But I'm going to be honest, right? I'm going to be honest, right? I'm going to be honest. The shtar is forged, but I'm going to be honest. I had a real shtar, the irkas. But the truth is, I went ahead and I lost the document. Va'amina inkit hai biyadai kolduhu. I know I have a shtar. I bought this land fair and square. I went ahead and I lost my shtar. So I took the liberty of reconstructing my shtar. So I reconstructed my shtar. So it's not really lying. It's not really forged. It's more, I would call it a replica. Right? I wouldn't call it a forgery, I'd call it a replica. Right? So therefore, again, so what he's doing over here is, on one hand, he's still standing by his claim. I bought this land. But yes, on a tech, if you really want to get legalese about it, so it's not the real shtar, it's a forged shtar. So I'm a Rav. So I'll say, what do you do with this? So Rav says, Malo l'shakir. Now, just by the way, I just want to point out over something interesting. The Rashbam, what does it mean the shtar is forged? When in this case Shimon says the shtar is forged, so the Rashbam gives three different interpretations of this. If you take a look at the end of the Rashbam, it's almost like right across. If you go from where it says Amar Rabba in the Gemara, the fourth line in, go into the Rashbam about 3 lines down right after the period. Inami le'iko le'perusha zayfa shtar mezuyef mamish. Sheziev chasimas ha'idim yafa, v'toim ha'idim kisurim chasimas yedeyem hi, u'mekayim ashtar. So listen to this. So the Rashbam says, and this is the interpretation we'll go with. What does it mean that he has a forged shtar? What does that mean? It literally means that Shimon rewrote the entire shtar, and he forged the signatures of the witnesses. But he did such a good job with the forgery, that the witnesses think that they said, you have to understand something. We see this clearly, that in the times of the Gemara, you had people who served as professional witnesses. Effectively, I think it's like what we would call today a notary, right? You had people who served in this professional capacity as witnesses. So we'll say, you can have a situation where a person signed on many different shtaros. And the truth is, you don't remember every single shtar that you sign on. You just don't remember every single shtar. So I'll say, so therefore what? So therefore so Shimon did a great job with this forgery. Tells Rabbi, and he's admitting it. Rabbi, I'm going to be honest, it's a forgery, but I'm telling you I have a real shtar, I lost it. I'm a Rabbi. So I'll say, so what do you do in this case? This is wild. Rabbi says, Malo l'shakir. The truth is, Rabbi say, we're going to believe him. You know, we're going to believe because he has a migo. What's the migo, Rabbi say? Literally, why should he lie? Because I will say the truth is, Rabbah says, listen, Shimon has no reason to admit his lie. Why does he have no reason? Because he could have gotten away with it. Why? I will say because the shtar, the truth is an excellent forgery. In other words, pretty much the witnesses thought it was their signatures. They were ready to uphold the shtar. He could have just simply stood by his story that this was the authentic shtar, and the truth is he would have won the case. But we'll say in general, migo means when someone else could have made a stronger claim, but instead they don't. They make a weaker claim. we believe the weaker claim because they had no incentive or they have no reason to lie about it. So Rabbi says, listen, Shimon didn't have to open his mouth. Shimon could have just said, Ruvain, I don't care what you say, this is not a forgery, this is a real shtar, and the halacha would have been on his side. The fact that now he admits that it's a forgery, again, we should believe him because he has amigo. So Rav Yosef says, what are you talking about? Amli Rav Yosef, Amai samachta haishtara chasva ba'amahu. Rav Yosef says, what are you talking about? Once he admits that the shtar is a forgery, then what? Ein al maladaber. There's nothing to talk about anymore. In other words, there's no discussion that could center around a forged document. You can't tell me that someone has a migo based on a forgery. In other words, what Rav Yosef is saying is, once he admits it's a forgery, all bets are off. There's no discussion anymore. Now we could discuss chazaka, not chazaka, whatever else, but the document itself no longer could be part of this ongoing discussion because it's like a pottery shard. So let's say, watch this. A similar case. So let's listen to this. Reuven goes over to Shimon. Shimon, give me the $100 that I lent you. V'hashtara. And here is the document. Because also remember again, when Reuven lends Shimon money, so Reuven, the creditor, has a document that outlines the debt. Who holds on to the document? The creditor, right? The lender, right? Because that document is the way the lender collects the money. So what happens? So Reuven says to Shimon, Shimon, give me the $100 I lent you. So what happens? V'hashtara. And I have a shtar. In other words, I have a document that proves you owe me the money. To which Shimon responds, Amalei. So Shimon, the supposed borrower, says, Shtara zayfahu. That's a forged document. That is a forged document. So I say, so what happens? So Gachin Lachash Rabba. So I say, sure enough, the lender bends down and whispers to Rabba. He says, Rebbe, you're right. In Shtara Zaifu, yeah, it's forged. But Miu Shtara Ma'al Yahavali V'irkas. Va'amina Inket Hai Biadai Kalduhu. So I have to say, the lender Reuven says, Rebbe, I want to tell you that he's right. It's forged, but I really did lend him money. I really do have a bona fide document, and I lost it. So I figured, you know what, I don't have the original, I'm going to do my best to reconstruct the replica. I did a pretty good job, no? Yeah. Right? It looks right? Looks pretty convincing. And again, he owes me the money. So Rabba again says, Ma'alo l'shakir. The truth is, we have so Reuven, the lender, has no reason to lie. I will say, why does he have no reason to lie? Say, because remember, Reuven could have just maintained his original claim, which is that the document was a valid document, and the truth is, no one would be able to. No one would have been able to counter the kiros. In other words, we're talking about a document that was so well forged that even the witnesses said, "Yeah, that's our signatures." We don't remember it, but that's our signatures. So we'll say the document would have held up in a court of law. In other words, all Reuven needed to do was keep his mouth shut, and the document would have done the work for him. Therefore, Rabbi says the fact that he comes clean and he goes ahead and he says it's a forgery. Rabbi says we believe him. So again, Rabbi says, "Amar Rav Yosef, amai kasam chesa haishtara chasam." Rav Yosef says the guy's a liar. The guy is a liar, and he's just admitted that he's a liar. He's just admitted that he created a forgery. The document itself is a pottery shard; it's nothing, and therefore, again, there is no credibility in this case. So we'll say, Amar Rav Idi bar Avos. So we'll say, who do we paskin like? So we'll say, you see this. So you see again this machlokes between Rabba and Rav Yosef. This ongoing machlokes between Rabba and Rav Yosef. So it says, Amar Rav Idi bar Avos, Hilchasa kavase de Rabba ba'ara, behilchasa kavase de Rav Yosef bezuzi. So we'll say, so listen to this. Rav Idi bar Avos says, the halacha follows Rabba in a case of land, in a case of real property, and the halacha follows Rav Yosef in a case of money. What does that mean on a practical level? What does that mean? The hilchasa kiraba ba'ara, the kaima aratikum. The halacha follows Rabba in a case of land, because it will say we will leave the land with the muchzak owner. The hilchasa kavase Rav Yosef bezuze tehechad the kaima zuzi lukmi. And the halacha follows Rav Yosef in a case of money, in order to leave money with the person who is muchzak in it. What is the Gemara saying? The Gemara essentially says we follow whichever opinion will allow the chazaka to remain intact, will allow the status quo to remain intact. So we'll say, so what does that mean? Let's play this out. What's the case of property? So the case of property on both sides, where we said before, right? Shimon comes over to Reuven. Reuven comes over to Shimon. Shimon, what are you doing on my property? Right? Shimon is the one who's living there now. So Shimon says, Reuven says, what are you doing on my property? Shimon says, It's my property. I bought it. I have a shtar. And what happens? He produces the shtar. Now it turns out that what he says, the shtar is forged. The shtar is forged. But again, Rabbah said we should believe him because essentially Ma'alo Shakir, he didn't have to lie. We could have just relied on the shtar. So the halacha follows Rabbah in that case. That we leave the property with Ruvain. We leave the property with Shimon. They both say, now why do we leave the property with Shimon? Because what are we essentially doing? Essentially what we're saying is, Hamotzi mechavera alav haraya. Shimon is the one who's living on the property. At the end of the day, we've got a forged shtar. So as I said, at the end of the day, Rabbi will say, you know what? I don't know who the property belongs to. But here's what I do know, which is what? Shimon's living there now. Which means Shimon is in possession. So the burden of proof, therefore, is going to be upon who? The burden of proof is going to be upon Ruvain to extract that property. So when Rav Idi Bar Avin says, we paskin like Rabbah, in the case of real property, we're not really paskin like Rabbah. We are, but what we're essentially saying is, Hamotzi mechavera alav haraya. He who is living on the land has the chazaka of being the owner until someone else could prove otherwise. But the burden of proof is going to be on the extractor. When it comes to the case of money, so what's the case of money? Reuven comes over to Shimon. Shimon, you owe me $1,000, and here is the document. Here's the document. Shimon says, I don't owe you anything. Document is forged. Reuven admits the document is forged. We'll say, what's the halacha? The halacha is the burden of proof remains with Reuven the creditor. Why? Because Shimon is the muhsak on the money. Shimon is the one who has the money right now. Reuven, you want to extract that money from Shimon, that's fine, but the burden of proof is now going to be upon you. And now that you just admitted that your document is forged, that document is no longer a proper vehicle of collection, and therefore the burden of proof is going to fall upon you. So we'll say, bottom line, what Rav Idi Bar Avin says is essentially, in all cases when there is doubt, we will apply the principle of Hamotzi mechaber alav haraya. He who has possession of the object, be it land or be it money, is the presumed owner until the extractor could prove otherwise. Says the Gemara. Hu arva. We'll say another interesting case. There was a guarantor. The Amar Leilalova, Habli meazuzi de parati lamal iluach or ilavach. So let's listen to this. So there was a guarantor. So we'll say this case takes a little bit of an interesting turn. So Reuven lent money to Shimon, and we'll call him Levi guaranteed the debt. So Levi comes over to Shimon the bar and says, Shimon, listen, I paid back your debt for you. But listen, there's a whole discussion on halacha, which we will discuss, as to whether or not if I'm a lender and I lend to the borrower as a guarantor, do I have to first go to the borrower to get the money? And only if the borrower defaults, I go to the guarantor? Or do I have the right to go to the guarantor directly? So we're going to see that discussion halacha. In any event, in this case over here, what occurs? So Levi, the guarantor, comes over to Shimon the bar and says, Shimon, listen, I paid back your debt. I paid back Reuven for you. You owe me $100. So here's the document, right? Again, because we'll say essentially what happened over here is that when the guarantor pays back the creditor, what the creditor does is he gives the guarantor the loan document, because that loan document is the vehicle of collection. So now the creditor gave the guarantor document of collection. Guarantor is showing up to the borrower and saying, borrower, you owe me $100. So we'll say, so says to him, Amrle, lav paratich. So he says, so the borrower says, okay, I know, we had this discussion last week. You remember again, I paid you back. Right? I mean, you came to me for the $100 that you paid to the lender, and I paid you back. Amar, lav hadar shakla sinuminai. To which the guarantor says, yes, you paid me back, but then again, remember, you borrowed again from me. In other words, you paid me back the $100 that you originally went ahead and borrowed from Reuven, and then you re-borrowed from me that same $100. So we'll say, so what's the halacha in this case? Now remember, over here, the guarantor is the one who is still holding on to the document. Look at the Rashbam for just a moment. Third white line of Rashbam. Lav hadarta v'sheklasinu minoi ukemi shelo parata dami v'dami belova lahod lo b'kach. So we'll say, so the guarantor is claiming that the borrower borrowed a second time. So I'll say, now the shaila is, and of course the borrower is saying, that never happened. You came to me for the original $100 that I borrowed, that you paid back to my creditor on my behalf. I paid you back, and I never borrowed a second $100 from you. So the Gemara says, so Shalcha Rav Idi Bar Avin L'Kamei D'Abaye Ki hai gav namai. So we'll say they sent this case before Rav Idi bar Avin, and they asked him, what is the halacha in this case? They both say, now here's what's interesting. Take a look at the Rashbam in the third of the widest lines, third line down in the wide lines. What is the status in this case? They both say, now what are they really asking about? So we'll say, watch this. Look at the Rashbam. Ki agav damai, delo dami kol kach, l'shtar milva deleel, tepaskidan kirav Yosef, tahasa moda haya, Baal ashtar sheshtar acha hayalo v'ne'evad v'lakach zolios be'odol lischos v'osam azuifu mamish telo nichtav al milva zeh hilchach hifsid deicha dekami zuzi tekum. So let's remember again in the previous case we had where the creditor was producing a shtar. In that case, the creditor admitted that a shtar was a forgery. This case of a hacha lo hayalo la'arif shtar acha mi'olam kim zeh. Vehilchach afagav de parinu kevan dader shaklinu kilo lo parinu dami v'chayva lifaro odilma mikamaka modu shepara v'kaymelan shtar shlavu parinu chozes. Supposed to watch this. This is fascinating. With this, we'll have to end for today. The real shayla over here is the following: what's unfolding over here? In this case, Rabbi say. So remember, the guarantor is admitting that the borrower paid him back the money. Right? Remember, that's the case. That's the mitzvah over here. So everyone's agreeing. There are two pieces that everyone agrees on. Everyone agrees that guarantor paid back Ruvain, the creditor, and that guarantor received payment from Shimon, the borrower. What's the point of contention? The point of contention over here is that guarantor is now claiming that he subsequently lent borrower Shimon. He got paid back, but he lent back that same $100. And Shimon borrower is claiming that what? That never happened. Now both say, now it's really at play. Now guarantor says, 1 second, I have a shtar. So we'll say what's really at play over here is the following. Now remember, that shtar is about a different transaction. Right? That shtar actually speaks about a transaction between Ruvain and Shimon, for which Levi was the guarantor. Levi is now saying that we repurposed that shtar to now reflect our new debt of you borrowing $100 from me. Rabbi said the fundamental machlokes over here is, can you repurpose shtaros, or do we say that once the debt outlined in the shtar has been repaid, that shtar essentially is what? Is done. Is done. It's done. The shibud, the lien of that shtar is done, and there is nothing more to speak about. Fine, so I'll just read one more line. So the Gemara says, so Sholchali Ravidi Baravim Lekaved Rav Ki Agav Namai. So we'll say, so that's actually we're going to step over here. So that I'm going to leave you on the cliffhanger. So we'll say, so that is the shayla that they sent ultimately again to Abaye. What is the status of this transaction? What is the nature of the shtar? We'll say Mitzvah to be continued tomorrow. Shkoyach. So then he's saying that we agreed to just use this.